And did you not forget to ask the mistress of the house for permission? I asked when I saw my mother-in-law standing on the doorstep of MY apartment with suitcases. My husband burst out laughing. Should mom ask herself for permission? I appreciated the joke, and 10 minutes later they were begging from the hallway, at least let us take our coats. Hello, dear listeners. I am happy to welcome you to my channel. Here is a new interesting story for you. Enjoy listening. When I bought this apartment, I was 27. I remember signing the papers. My hand was shaking from excitement and pride at the same time. A one-bedroom place, 38 square meters, 5th floor of a regular building on the outskirts of the city. Nothing special, you might say. For me it was an entire world. My world. Every square centimeter paid for by my own work. Every dollar saved, denied to myself in something unnecessary, collected through years of work in a bank. No loans, no money from parents, everything by myself. At that time I worked as a bank clerk. Later I became a senior client specialist. The salary was average but stable. I learned to save from a young age. My mother taught me. She raised my brother and me alone after my father left for another woman. She taught the main thing: rely only on yourself, protect what is yours, do not scatter your efforts. So I did not. I saved, counted, put aside, and finally I had the keys in my hands, my own place. I furnished the apartment modestly but tastefully. Light wallpaper with a small floral pattern, a beige sofa that pulled out into a real bed, a small dining table by the window. In the kitchen, a white set bought in installments and paid off in 6 months. I chose the curtains for a long time, imagined dozens of options, settled on gray-blue to match my eyes. Funny, of course, but I wanted the home to reflect me. I lived alone for almost 3 years, got used to the silence, to everything being in its place, to morning coffee on my tiny balcony where I made a little green corner with several potted plants. On weekends I met friends or visited my mother. Work, home, books, occasional dates that led nowhere. Men were either unserious or came with so many problems it was scary. In general, I lived calmly and did not complain. I met Evaristo at work. He came to open a deposit, and we started talking. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a pleasant smile and confident manners. Not flashy, but neatly dressed, dark jeans, gray shirt under a sweater. He spoke calmly, carefully choosing his words. He listened attentively about the deposit terms, made careful jokes. I liked that he did not try to impress me right away, did not brag, did not shower me with compliments after 1 minute. When he asked for my phone number, I was a little embarrassed but gave it. Honestly, I did not expect him to call. But he called the next day, invited me to a simple cozy cafe. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his job as an engineer, about his hobby of fishing, about renting an apartment near the center because his mother's apartment was across the city and the commute was exhausting. He mentioned his mother in passing. She lived alone. He sometimes visited and helped her. Nothing unusual. I liked that Evaristo seemed independent. He had his own life, his own plans, his own space. He did not complain, did not whine, did not shift responsibility. He worked, paid rent, built a career, said he hoped to save enough for his own apartment in 5 years, maybe even a 2-bedroom if he got promoted. That impressed me. I am the same. I like when a person knows what they want and moves toward it. We dated for several months. Everything was good. Calm, not passionate fireworks, but warm and caring. He walked me home, sometimes stayed overnight, sometimes left. He did not pressure me, did not rush, did not dig into my past. I started to think maybe this was it, what they call real relationship, not drama and not fireworks, but reliability, understanding, shared views. He still spoke little about his mother. Once I asked why he rarely visited her if she lived alone. Evaristo grimaced and said they had a difficult relationship, she was controlling, so he moved out to breathe easier. I nodded, thinking everyone has their family complications. I did not give it much thought. A mistake, clearly. I should have. I met Remedios 6 months into the relationship. Evaristo postponed the meeting several times, saying either he or she was busy. I did not insist, but curiosity and unease grew inside me. Finally, he invited me to his mother's for Sunday lunch. Remedios met us at the door of her two-room apartment in an old building. A woman around 55, medium height, plump, short, carefully set hair like she just came from the salon. A simple checked house dress with a frilly apron on top. Light makeup. Strict face, pressed lips, sharp evaluating gaze. I immediately felt like not a guest but a specimen on display. "Oh, so this is the bride," she said, stretching the word as if tasting something. Come in, come in. Everestito, you should have warned me she is so thin, I would have cooked more." I forced a smile, handed her chocolates and flowers. She accepted them without much gratitude, nodded, and led us to the kitchen. The table was set like 10 people were coming. Salads, hot dishes, pastries. Evaristo lit up and praised her cooking. I sat and discreetly looked around. Everything was old-fashioned but clean. Heavy furniture, lace tablecloth. Photos of Evaristo everywhere, baby, schoolboy, graduate. No father in sight. Clearly that story was painful. Remedios noticed my look and smirked. "We have been alone our whole lives. His father left when my little boy was 5. Ran off with some tramp, excuse my language, and we never saw him again. I raised him alone, educated him alone, did everything alone. Right, Everestito?" He nodded with his mouth full. I did not comment though the word tramp stung. She poured tea, chatted about neighbors and work, then suddenly switched to me. "And you, Esperanza, what neighborhood do you live in?" I told her. 5th floor, 1 bedroom. "Yours?" She raised a brow. "Mine." Well, good for you. Did your parents help?" "No, I saved it all myself." "So independent." "That is good." She sipped tea, paused, then added, "Of course, a 1-bedroom is cramped for a man like Everestito. He needs space, a place for his things, maybe a study. Right, son?" He mumbled. I clenched my teeth but kept smiling. She continued, "Girls these days are ambitious. In my time you had to work and stand in lines to get a place. Now look, 27 and already a homeowner. Though perhaps you had some help, and you are shy to admit it?" "No, I really earned it myself," I repeated firmly. 3 years saving every bonus. Living alone, spending only on myself, so I could save. Remedios smirked again like she did not believe me. Then she started talking about Evaristo's previous girlfriends, all flawed in her eyes. One was frivolous, one greedy, one stupid. Another wanted to move him to another city away from his mother. Imagine the nerve. I understood by the end of lunch that this woman considered no one good enough for her son, and I was no exception. She was simply still studying me, searching for weaknesses. When we were leaving, Remedios hugged Evaristo on the doorstep and held him for a long time, as if he were going off to war and not just across town. She gave me a dry nod and said, "Come again, if anything." I thanked her, but in my mind I already knew I did not want to repeat that experience. In the car I asked Evaristo why his mother behaved so strangely. He shrugged and said she was always like that, used to being the center of attention, jealous of everyone around him. That it was nothing serious, she would eventually get used to me, accept it. I nodded, but the unpleasant feeling remained. I did not like how she talked about my apartment, about previous fiancés, how she looked at me like she was evaluating merchandise at a market. A few months later, Evaristo proposed. Nothing fancy, no kneeling, no musicians. Just an evening at home, in my kitchen, over tea. He pulled out a little box with a ring and said he wanted to spend his life with me, that I was what he needed. I said yes. I will not pretend I was over the moon, but I felt warmth, hope, confidence. I really believed we could build a normal family despite his difficult mother. We had a modest wedding, about 30 people. My family, a few friends, colleagues. Evaristo invited a couple of friends and, of course, his mother. Remedios arrived in a dark blue dress, fully styled with hair and makeup. She acted like the queen mother at a coronation. She hovered around Evaristo the whole time, fixing his tie, brushing imaginary dust off his jacket. She forced polite smiles at me and gave the standard congratulations, but her eyes were full of disapproval. I remember during the dinner she stood up with a glass and made a toast. She wished her son happiness and health, and wished me to be a good homemaker and support for him. Then she added that if anything happened, she would always be there, ready to help, because her son was the most precious thing in her life. The guests applauded. I smiled, but chills ran down my back. There was something possessive in those words, as if she were saying, "You may be his wife, but I am still more important." After the wedding, Evaristo moved in with me, or rather, moved into his place. That was how he immediately viewed my apartment. I did not argue. I wanted him to feel comfortable, so this would be our shared space. He brought his things: clothes, books, fishing rods, boxes of tools. He unpacked everything, filled half the closet, hung his coat and shoes in the hallway. In the evenings he sat on my couch, flipping channels like he had lived there his whole life. Gradually his belongings multiplied. He brought an old TV from his mother's apartment, put it in the kitchen so he could watch the news while eating, dragged in a huge armchair where he always read. The armchair was ugly, brown, and worn out, but he insisted it was comfortable. I gave in, even though it took up half the living room. Remedios started visiting on weekends. At first rarely, once a month. She arrived with bags full of food, saying she brought her darling son his favorite cutlets, pies, salads. I thanked her, though inside I thought I was perfectly capable of cooking myself. She walked around the apartment, checking everything, wiping a finger along a shelf to check for dust, shaking her head as if to say I should clean more often. Evaristo brushed her off, said everything was fine, but she did not stop. Once she showed up with rags and cleaning supplies, said she would help tidy up. I was at work. When I came back, the apartment smelled like bleach, things were rearranged, my skincare jars in the bathroom lined up by height. Remedios proudly announced she washed the windows, dusted the chandelier, washed the curtains. I thanked her, but inside I was boiling. This was my space, my home. I decided when and what to clean. Evaristo did not notice my frustration. He was happy his mother was helping, said we were lucky because many mothers-in-law only cause trouble, and his mom was such a sweetheart. I stayed silent, not wanting to start a fight, but with each of Remedios' visits my apartment felt less like mine. She started giving advice. About cooking, Evaristo likes thicker soup, juicier cutlets, potatoes with dill. About cleaning, vacuum more here, wipe more often there. About money, save, plan for the future, for children who would come one day. She talked about children constantly. When will you give me grandchildren? Time is passing. Evaristo joked it away. I stayed quiet. Sometimes she hinted the apartment was too small. If only it were a two-bedroom, you could have guests, then a nursery. I clenched my teeth and left the room so I would not lash out. It was my apartment, bought with my money. No one had the right to call it too small. Evaristo apparently did not think at all about the fact the apartment was mine. He behaved as if it were ours jointly, or even his. Invited friends without warning, left socks everywhere, took over the living room table with his drawings. When one day I timidly suggested he warn me before inviting guests, he looked genuinely confused. This is my home now, why should I ask permission? I had nothing to say. We were married, shared household, it sounded logical. Yet inside, resentment grew. That year passed. Mostly peaceful, a few conflicts, getting used to each other. Remedios visited, lectured, sometimes stayed overnight because it was too late to go home. I tolerated it, told myself this is normal. My mother taught me to be patient, not make a fuss, solve problems quietly. So I swallowed everything and smiled through clenched teeth. But deep down I knew it was wrong. I felt I was being slowly pushed out of my own space, out of my life. Remedios did not see me as a wife or equal, but as a temporary obstacle between her and her son. And Evaristo, who supposedly loved me, did not notice I was losing ground. I developed a habit. When Evaristo fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen with tea and looked out the window. I reminded myself that everything around me was mine, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, every tile. No one had the right to rule here except me. Those thoughts calmed me. But in the daytime, in the routine, they slipped away, and I became a shadow again in my own home. 6 months ago, Remedios decided to renovate. I found out accidentally. Evaristo mentioned she complained about the wallpaper and ceiling. He said it offhand, but I felt uneasy. Renovation is long, messy, dusty, and immediately I sensed she might try to move in temporarily. A week later she called. I was home alone. Evaristo was working late. Remedios spoke cheerfully, said she hired workers. They started tearing off wallpaper. The place was chaos. Then she paused dramatically and added, "Of course, it is impossible to live in such dust. I have been coughing at night for a week. Maybe I could stay with you for a while, Esperanzada." I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles went white. That sweet Esperanzada cut like a knife. She usually called me dryly by name. So now she needed something. "Remedios, we only have one room," I said carefully. "We sleep on a sofa bed. It will be uncomfortable for you." "Oh, no worries, I am not picky," she chirped. "I can sleep on a mattress on the floor. I will be fine. The main thing is not to breathe that dust at my age." I scrambled for excuses. I said I had dust allergies, that she might bring dust on her clothes, that we lived by a busy road and she would not sleep, that Evaristo snored. She counted every point. She would wash her clothes. She could buy earplugs. Snoring is not fatal. I felt her press harder, refusing to retreat. "Listen, maybe a hotel for a week?" I finally suggested. "We can help pay if needed." Silence on the line. Then her voice turned cold and offended. "I am not a beggar to go to a hotel. I just thought my own son would not refuse his mother." "Well, fine. I will manage. Maybe I will end up in the hospital with lung problems, then I will definitely not bother anyone." She hung up. I stood staring at my phone, feeling like the worst person alive. Classic manipulation, and I knew it, but it still hurt. In the evening Evaristo asked if she called. I told him. He frowned and said, "You should not have said that. You could have agreed, just for a week. She is not asking out of whim." "Evaristo, it's 38 square meters here," I said wearily. "There are two of us, and even that feels cramped sometimes. Imagine adding one more person." "Mom isn't one more person, she's my mother," he snapped, and went to the kitchen. I didn't continue the argument, but the next few days were tense. Evaristo walked around sullen, spoke in monosyllables, and turned to the wall at night. Remedios didn't call anymore but sent her son messages about how bad everything was and how she was suffering. He showed me his phone screen with obvious reproach in his eyes. I held my ground. A few days later my mother-in-law found another way. She called Evaristo at work, complained about her health, said her blood pressure was jumping, her heart hurt, and she needed to lie down in peace and quiet. He rushed home pale and said his mother felt really bad, that we needed to take her in at least for the weekend. I didn't have the strength to refuse and agreed to the weekend. Remedios arrived Friday evening with a huge bag. Evaristo met her, helped her undress, settled her on the couch, and tucked her in with a blanket. I made tea and brought out some cookies. My mother-in-law sat there pale, eyes half closed, softly groaning, yet half an hour later, when Evaristo went to the store for groceries, she got up, walked around the apartment, peeked into the kitchen, and inspected the fridge. "There's not much of anything in here," she remarked, taking out my little jar of yogurt. "Everestito is a man. He needs hearty meals. Are you keeping an eye on that?" "I am," I answered curtly, taking the yogurt back. The weekend turned into a trial. Remedios slept on the couch. Evaristo laid out bedding for the two of us on the floor. I tossed and turned all night on the uncomfortable mattress, listening to my mother-in-law snore on my favorite couch. In the morning she got up bright-eyed, with no sign of feeling unwell, and made breakfast, fried eggs with sausage, somehow finding everything she needed in my kitchen without even asking permission. Evaristo ate with gusto and praised his mother's cooking. I drank my coffee in silence. All day my mother-in-law issued instructions. "It's dusty here. You should wipe it down. That laundry needs washing. This plant is withered. It needs repotting." Evaristo agreed, nodded, and did as she said. I felt like a stranger in my own apartment. On Sunday evening Remedios got ready to leave. She hugged her son goodbye, held his shoulders for a long time, looked into his eyes, gave me a curt nod, and said thanks for the hospitality. When the door closed behind her, I exhaled with relief. Evaristo looked at me and shook his head. "You could have been more polite. She's trying, she cares." I was polite, I answered quietly. "I'm just tired." "Tired of what?" You didn't even do anything. Mom cooked and cleaned by herself. I didn't argue. I just went to the kitchen, closed the door, and sat by the window. I looked at the evening city, at the lights in the windows across the way, and thought that this was only the beginning. In the following months, Remedios called regularly to report on the renovation's progress, complained about the workers dragging their feet, then again brought up how nice it would be to stay with us for another week. Each time I found a new excuse. I had a business trip. Evaristo would be on a 24-hour shift. We had started a bathroom repair. My mother-in-law took offense and sighed, but backed off. In those moments, Evaristo looked at me with reproach. One day he couldn't take it and said bluntly, "Why are you like this? She's my mother. She's alone. It's hard for her. She has an apartment, friends, colleagues," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "She isn't a lonely old lady, Evaristo. She's used to controlling everything. If we let her stay for a week now, it'll be even harder to refuse next time." "You're exaggerating," he waved me off. "Mom's not like that. I can see exactly what she's like," I insisted. "When she's here, I feel like a guest. She gives orders, rearranges my things, meddles in my life." "This isn't your life, it's our life," Evaristo said sharply. "And it's our apartment. Or do you still think it's only your territory?" I fell silent. There it was. He really did think the apartment was shared, even though all the paperwork was in my name and he hadn't put in a single dollar. Saying it out loud felt petty and stingy. I kept quiet then, but I remembered his words. My mother-in-law's renovation dragged on. First it was a week, then 2, then a month. The workers were slow, the wrong materials arrived, the wallpaper had to be redone. Every time she called, I tensed, expecting another request to move in. But Remedios seemed to change tactics. She stopped asking directly and simply complained, playing on pity. Evaristo grew gloomy, sighed, and sometimes suggested on his own, "Maybe we should take her in for a week after all." I refused each time. I came up with reasons, sometimes real, sometimes invented. Evaristo got angry and hurt, but didn't insist. Apparently he understood it would be cramped. One evening Remedios arrived without warning, just rang the doorbell and stood there with a bag of groceries and a smile. She said she was passing by and decided to drop in and bring her darling son some treats. Evaristo was delighted. I forced a smile. My mother-in-law came in, took off her things, went to the kitchen, and started unpacking jars, bags, and containers. "Here, I made some preserves," she said, setting everything on my shelves. "Pickled cucumbers, tomatoes. Everestito loves them. And blackcurrant compote, his favorite." I stood in the doorway watching her play the mistress of the house and kept silent. Evaristo fussed around, helping and thanking her, and then she cooked dinner from what she had brought. We sat at the table, ate, and chatted about trivialities. Remedios kept glancing at me, gauging my reactions. After dinner she didn't hurry to leave. She made herself comfortable on the couch, asked for tea, and turned on the TV. She stayed until 10:30, and then suddenly exclaimed, "Oh dear, the last bus has already gone. What will I do now?" Evaristo immediately suggested she stay over. I knew it was a trap, but there was nothing I could do. Sending her across the city by taxi late at night would have looked cruel. I nodded silently. Remedios settled in on the couch with satisfaction. Evaristo and I lay down on the floor again. I didn't sleep that night. I listened to my mother-in-law's soft snoring, to Evaristo breathing beside me, and thought how none of this was accidental. She had stayed late on purpose to spend the night. She was testing whether she could get away with it, whether the daughter-in-law would protest. I hadn't protested. I kept quiet. So, permitted. In the morning my mother-in-law got up early, got ready, said goodbye, and left. Evaristo was in a good mood, joking and hugging me. I responded stiffly. He didn't notice. A week later Remedios called again, once more complaining about the renovation. She said the workers promised to finish in 10 days. I was relieved, finally it would be over soon. But then she added, "Though while everything is drying, I can't live there. At least 2 weeks. You don't mind if I move in with you for that time, do you?" Evaristo stood next to me, watching me expectantly. I searched for words and reasons, but nothing came to mind. The workers were finishing, the walls needed to dry, everything sounded logical, nothing to object to. Remedios, maybe you could stay with a friend or your sister, I suggested weakly. My friend is renovating too, and my sister lives in another city, she quickly replied. Everestito, tell your wife I have nowhere to go, or does she want me to sleep on the street? Evaristo reached out, took the phone from me, and told his mother. Mom, of course, come over. We'll sort it out. I stared at him in astonishment. He didn't even ask for my opinion, he just decided on his own. When he finished the call, I said quietly, "You could have consulted me." "About what?" He shrugged. "She's my mother. She has nowhere to go." What was I supposed to say? No, live wherever you want. You could at least have asked if it was convenient for me. Esperanza, it's temporary. Evaristo waved his hand irritably. 2 weeks max. You'll manage. I turned around and went to the bathroom. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and buried my face in my hands. I didn't cry, just sat there, breathing, counting to 10 and then to 20, trying to calm down. I knew that if I started arguing now, it would turn into a scene, and I hate scenes. My mother taught me to hold back, not to fan conflicts. So I held back. The next day Evaristo said we needed to get ready for his mother's arrival. I suggested that my mother-in-law could sleep on the couch and we'd use a folding bed. Evaristo looked at me as if I'd said something horrible. Mom is older, she needs a comfortable place, he said in a lecturing tone. We're young, we can handle sleeping on the floor. I didn't argue. We bought an air mattress and bedding, stacked everything in the corner, and waited for Remedios to arrive. But that time she never came. She called 2 days later and said she'd found an alternative. A friend agreed to take her in for a week. Her friend's renovation had been postponed. I breathed a sigh of relief. Evaristo was slightly disappointed. Then Remedios' renovation dragged on for another month. It turned out the workers laid the bathroom tiles incorrectly and had to redo them. My mother-in-law called to complain and fume, but she didn't ask to stay with us again. Apparently she realized I would resist. During that period Evaristo became colder. He talked less, hugged me less often, and spent evenings on his phone. I knew he resented me for refusing to take his mother in. I tried to smooth things over, cooked his favorite dishes, suggested going to the movies, but he brushed me off, said he was tired and wanted to be alone. One evening, after we'd been silent for hours, I couldn't stand it. Evaristo, are you still angry about your mother? He looked up from his phone, surprised. I'm not angry. I'm just thinking. About what? About the fact that you're selfish, he said calmly, as if stating a fact. My mother felt unwell and needed help, and you refused, because of some personal principles. I felt myself tighten inside. These aren't principles, I said slowly. This is my apartment, my space. I have the right to decide who lives here. Your apartment, Evaristo smirked. You're always going on about that, as if I'm a stranger here. That's not what I meant. Oh, really? Then what? He raised his voice. I'm your husband. She's my mother, your mother-in-law. Normal people help relatives, but all you do is build walls. I stayed silent. Arguing was pointless. Evaristo saw things his own way, and I couldn't change his mind. He thought I was selfish and himself a devoted son. Maybe that's how it was. Maybe I really was too rigid. But deep down I knew for sure, if I gave in, Remedios wouldn't stay for 2 weeks, she'd stay a month, then 2, find reasons to prolong it, and gradually push me out of my own apartment. At last the renovation at my mother-in-law's place ended. She called Evaristo, happily announced that everything was ready, the workers had left, and she could move back in. Evaristo was delighted and suggested we go help arrange the furniture. We went together. Remedios' apartment looked fresh and clean. It smelled of paint and new wallpaper. Proudly, she led us from room to room, showing what had been done where. It didn't seem like such a major renovation to me. Wallpaper, paint, new bathroom tiles, nothing huge, yet it had taken half a year. Odd, but I kept quiet. I helped arrange things, hang curtains, wash windows. Remedios kept giving orders, telling us where to put what. Evaristo did as he was told, and so did I. By evening we were done. My mother-in-law set the table, thanked us for our help, and looked pleased. As we left, I felt relieved. The renovation was finished, so there'd be no more requests to move in. I could finally exhale. Evaristo was cheerful the whole way home, talking about how well everything turned out and how happy his mother was. I listened, nodded, and shared his happiness. At home we made up. Evaristo hugged me and said he'd missed me, that the past months had been hard but now everything would get better. I believed him. I wanted to believe. A few weeks of calm followed. Remedios called less often, came by on weekends but not for long, brought food, chatted with her son, and left. I relaxed and thought the worst was behind us, though a vague unease lingered deep down. Remedios had retreated too easily. She wasn't the type to give up. I knew she was just waiting for the right moment, and when it came, she wouldn't miss it. I was right. Friday turned out to be long. Work piled up and I left an hour later than usual. On the bus, watching the evening city roll by, I thought how nice it would be to get home, change into something comfy, make tea, and curl up on the couch with a book. Evaristo had said he'd be back late. The department was rushing to finish an important project. So I'd have the evening to myself. Peace and quiet. The key turned smoothly in the lock. I pushed the door open and froze. In the hallway stood two huge, dark blue suitcases on wheels, clearly expensive. Nearby were a bag of groceries and a shopping bag with some things. Voices drifted from the living room, Evaristo and his mother. My heart dropped. I slowly took off my shoes, hung my bag on a hook, and went into the room. Evaristo was on the couch beside Remedios, his arm around her shoulders, telling her something. She smiled and nodded, looking pleased, and all done up, dark green dress, neat hair, light makeup. When she saw me, her smile widened even more. "And here's the little hostess," she trilled. "Evaristo said you were running late. We've been waiting." I looked at my husband. He looked guilty and yet pleased. He stood, came over, tried to hug me. I stepped back. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. "Mom's here." Evaristo spread his hands, as if that explained everything. "She wants to stay for a bit." "A bit? How long is a bit?" Remedios rose from the couch, came closer, still smiling. "Well, 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month," she said lightly, as if it were a couple of days. "I'll be living here for a month." I felt something snap inside. A month. A whole month, 3 of us in my one-room apartment. I looked at the suitcases in the hall, then at my mother-in-law, then at Evaristo. He avoided my eyes. "And you didn't think to ask the lady of the house for permission?" I asked evenly. Silence fell. Evaristo didn't get it at first, then it dawned on him and he burst out laughing, loud, booming laughter, as if I had told the funniest joke in the world. Remedios smiled condescendingly and shook her head. Should a mother ask herself for permission? Evaristo managed between laughs, wiping away tears. I slowly set down the cup I'd absent-mindedly picked up in the kitchen on my way in. I looked at him closely. So that's how it was. The apartment was mine, the papers were in my name. I had saved for years, paid for it, invested in it. But in my husband's and his mother's minds, it had all been redivided long ago. Evaristo lived here, therefore this was his home, and since it was his home, his mother had every right to make herself comfortable. Meanwhile, Remedios went to the kitchen and began taking out jars, bags, and containers from her bag. I heard her open my fridge, move things around, commenting aloud. "Almost empty again. Evaristo must be starving. Good thing I brought some proper food." Evaristo followed his mother, and I stayed standing in the middle of the room, staring at the suitcases, listening to them talking and joking in the kitchen as if I didn't exist, as if I meant nothing. I walked to the window and looked down. Evening was falling, streetlights turning on, people hurrying about their lives. Suddenly I wanted to be anywhere but here. Yet this was my apartment, my home, and no one had the right to decide for me who could live here. I turned and went to the hallway. I grabbed the first suitcase and dragged it to the door. It was heavy, stuffed full, clearly packed for more than just a month. I opened the door and rolled it out into the hallway. Then I went back for the second one. Evaristo and Remedios were still in the kitchen. They didn't notice what I was doing. The second suitcase went out next, then the bag of groceries, then the shopping bag with belongings. I worked quickly, precisely, not thinking, just acting. Then I took Evaristo's jacket and his mother's coat off the hooks. Their bags. All of it went into the hallway. When I came back inside, they were standing in the kitchen doorway staring at me in confusion. Remedios was holding a jar of jam. Evaristo had a milk carton in his hand. Their faces looked shocked, confused. Esperanza, what are you doing? Evaristo asked slowly. I didn't answer. I simply gestured toward the exit. Remedios was the first to understand. Her face stretched, her eyes widened. Are you insane? She gasped. Are you throwing me out? Yes, I said briefly. Evaristo, say something to her. Evaristo tried to come toward me, grabbed my hand, but I yanked it away sharply. Stop it, this isn't funny, he said with a nervous laugh. Come on, enough joking. I'm not joking. Get out, both of you. Remedios threw the jar of jam onto the couch and rushed at me, her face twisted, her voice sharp and shrill. How dare you? I am his mother, do you understand? His mother. You're nobody, nothing, and I raised him all by myself, without anyone's help. You raised him in your apartment, I replied calmly. And this one is mine, and I didn't give you permission to come here. Permission? She practically jumped from indignation. I don't need your permission. Evaristo lives here, so I can too. No, you can't. Evaristo stepped between us, tried to calm his mother, then turned to me. His face was red, eyes darting. Esperanza, stop. End this drama right now. Mom came to stay a bit. What's the big deal? She planned to live here for a month, I said evenly. Without asking me. In my apartment. Our apartment. Evaristo barked. We are husband and wife, everything is shared. No, the apartment is in my name. I bought it before I ever met you. You're registered here, yes, but I'm the owner, and I decide who gets to live here. He fell silent because he knew it was true. Legally, I was right, and he knew it. Remedios paled, then turned red, then pale again. Her voice became quiet and venomous. So that's your true face. Greedy, cold, heartless. Evaristo, do you see who you married? A snake. I stayed silent. I turned around, took my phone from the table, put it in my pocket. Then I walked calmly to the hallway, opened the door wide. The suitcases, bags, jackets, all of it lay outside. If a neighbor came out, they would be shocked, of course. I didn't care. Out, I repeated. Remedios darted to the couch, grabbed her purse. Evaristo stood there, unsure what to do. His mother tugged on his sleeve. Let's go. Let's leave. I'm not staying in this house. Mom, wait. He tried to stop her, but she was already out the door. He looked at me, bewildered. Esperanza, are you serious? Completely. This is ridiculous. What's all this drama about? Out, Evaristo. He stood still for a second, then cursed under his breath and left. I slammed the door, turned the key, put on the chain. I leaned against the door, closed my eyes, took a deep breath. Then it started. First, they pounded. Loud, demanding, insistent. Evaristo yelled for me to open immediately and stop this nonsense. Remedios wailed, sniffled, called me every name she could think of. I stood still, listening, not moving. Then the knocking softened, the voices turned pleading. Evaristo begged me to talk, to discuss everything calmly. Remedios sobbed that she had never been treated with such disrespect in her life. I stayed quiet, counted my heartbeat. 10 minutes passed. The voices weakened, turned pitiful. Evaristo wasn't demanding anymore, he was begging. He said it was cold outside, their coats were inside, they had no keys. Remedios whimpered that she would freeze, that her health was fragile, that she would not survive this humiliation. At least let us get our coats, it's cold outside. Evaristo whined, knocking weakly now. I didn't open. I walked to the living room, sat at the table, opened my laptop. I found a website with divorce forms and began filling one out. My hands were shaking, letters blurry, but I typed. Methodically, line by line. Last name, first name. Marriage registration date. Reason for divorce. In the reason field I wrote simply, irreconcilable differences. They were still mumbling outside, but quieter now. Then silence. I got up, looked through the peephole. The landing was empty. The suitcases were gone, so were the bags. They had left. I returned to the table, finished the document, printed it, folded the pages, put them in a folder. I walked around the apartment. Everything in its place. Quiet, empty, peaceful. In the kitchen, I found the food Remedios had already put on the shelves. Jars of jam, pickles, tomatoes, containers of meat patties. I packed it all into a bag, tied it, placed it by the door. Then I remembered the jar she had thrown on the couch. It was still intact. I put it in the bag too. My phone vibrated. Evaristo. I looked at the screen. Declined the call. A minute later, again. Declined again. Then messages started coming. Long, messy, full of typos. He demanded explanations, accused me of cruelty, begged me to open the door. I read them. I didn't reply. Remedios texted too, from his phone. Short and nasty, "You'll regret this, bitch." I smirked and deleted it. I went to bed late. I turned off my phone so it wouldn't bother me. I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. I thought about what I had done. I had thrown my husband and his mother out of my apartment, without coats, without keys, in the cold evening. Cruel? Yes. Fair? Also yes. They came without asking, decided they had the right to take over my home, my life. Evaristo laughed at my question about asking the homeowner for permission, so he didn't consider me the homeowner. He saw the apartment as his, and his mother acted as if it was her territory and she had every right to come and stay for as long as she wished. No, enough. I had stayed silent too long, tolerated too much, backed down too often, listened to accusations that I was selfish, that I did not value family, that I pushed away Evaristo's loved ones. Yet family is not only duty, it is also respect, boundaries, consent, and none of that existed here. Only pressure, manipulation, and attempts to dominate. I fell asleep closer to morning, heavy and dreamless sleep. Woke up late, at 10, got up, washed my face, brewed coffee, turned on my phone. 37 missed calls and 24 messages. Evaristo had been writing all night. The messages varied. At first angry, "How dare you? Who do you think you are? I will not let you treat me like this." Then pitiful, I froze, "Mother and I barely found a taxi. I do not have money for a hotel. We had to go to my mother's place." Then angry again, "You destroyed the family. You are a heartless monster. I will file for divorce myself." Then pleading again, "Let us talk. I did not want to hurt you. I just did not realize you would take it like this." I read and drank my coffee. Calmly, slowly. I did not reply. Then I opened the file with the divorce application, read it again. Everything correct, fully filled in, only needed to submit. I got up, got dressed, took the folder with papers, and left the apartment. The day was sunny, cold, windy. I walked down the street, looked at passers-by, store windows, the trees losing their last leaves. I felt strange, both light and heavy, as if I had dropped a huge weight from my shoulders but gained emptiness in return. The office was not crowded. I took a ticket, sat in the waiting area, watched the display board. My number came up quickly. I approached the window, handed over the documents. The clerk skimmed them, asked a couple of questions, accepted the application. She said that within a month they would assign a hearing date and send a notice by mail. I stepped outside, stopped, breathed deeply. That was it. It began. No way back. My phone buzzed again. Evaristo. A voice message this time. I played it. His voice sounded hoarse, tired. "Esp, enough already. We did not sleep all night. Mom is hysterical. I am on edge too. Let us meet and talk. I understand now that you were right. I should have asked you before inviting Mom. I am sorry. Let us fix everything. Please open the door. I want to come home." Home. He called my apartment home. Yet he did not think he needed my approval to decide who would live there. A contradiction he did not even notice himself. I deleted the message, put the phone in my pocket, and kept walking. I went to a cafe, ordered lunch, sat by the window, ate, watched the street, thought about what would come next. Divorce, property division. Although there was nothing to divide, everything was mine, then life alone again. Like before Evaristo, quiet, calm, predictable. I did not feel afraid. I felt relief, as if I finally did what I should have done long ago but had not dared. I defended what was mine, my space, my right to decide, my life. I returned home in the evening, bought a few groceries on the way, just for a couple days. Got to my floor, paused at the door, listened. Silence. No one. I opened it, walked in, locked it behind me. The apartment greeted me with quiet. I took off my coat, changed clothes, went to the kitchen, turned on the kettle, took my favorite mug from the shelf, made mint tea. I sat by the window, looked at the evening city lights. The phone lay on the table, lighting up from time to time with new messages. Evaristo was still writing, though less often. Remedios had also sent a few angry ones. I did not read them, did not reply. I just sat there, drank tea, and felt that I had made the right choice. They thought I would fold, fear loneliness, pity them, open the door and beg forgiveness. I am not that kind. I worked too hard for this apartment, put too much of myself into it, to allow anyone to take it from me or turn it into a public passageway. This was my home, my fortress, and now I knew firmly, only those who respect my boundaries, see my worth, and do not try to dominate or use me can be let in. Evaristo and his mother failed that test spectacularly, and now they would live with their choice, just as I would live with mine. I finished my tea, washed the mug, went to the living room, lay on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, took a book from the shelf. I read until my eyes grew heavy, then turned off the light and fell asleep soundly, peacefully, without anxious dreams. Outside, the city lived its life, indifferent to small human dramas unfolding in thousands of apartments. Yet for me this drama was the most important one, because in it I finally stopped being a victim and became the master of my own fate. Morning greeted me with bright sunlight slipping through the curtains. I woke up rested, as if for the first time in many months I had truly slept. I stretched, stood up, walked around the apartment. Silence. No strange noises, no foreign items, no feeling that someone would burst in and disturb my peace. Just me and my space. The phone still lay on the kitchen table where I left it last night. I turned on the screen. 12 more messages and 8 missed calls. Evaristo wrote around 3 in the morning, then at 6, then at 8. Remedios too. 3 messages, each longer than the one before. I sat down and opened the messages from my mother-in-law. The first was short, "You will regret it." The second longer, "Think you are smart? Everestito will leave you, I will make sure of it. I have seen women like you, predators who lure men with their little apartments and then show their true colors. My son will not stay with you." The third was almost hysterical, "You threw us out into the street. We could have frozen. I will report you to the police and let them decide what to call it." I smirked. To the police? For kicking out uninvited guests from my own apartment? Let her try. Any officer would see who is right. Evaristo's messages were different. First angry, then pleading, then angry again, then pitiful again. He bounced between indignation and attempts to win me back. The last message, sent at 8 in the morning, said, "Esperanza, I will come today. We need to talk. I will take my things and we will calmly discuss everything. I hope you came to your senses." Came to my senses, as if I was the one who lost my mind, not him and his mother. I typed a short reply, "Come at 3. Your things will be ready." Sent it, put the phone aside, and went about my tasks. First I changed the bed linen. Evaristo slept on this couch 2 nights ago, yet I wanted to erase even the trace of his presence. I put the old linen into the laundry, took fresh light blue sheets with small flowers, my favorite, made the couch, fluffed the pillows. Then I went through the apartment collecting his things. Clothes in the closet, razor in the bathroom, phone charger by the bed, books on the shelf, toolbox in the storage closet, fishing rods on the balcony. I carefully packed everything into big bags. Found his old armchair, the brown worn one he dragged from his mother's apartment. Tried to move it. Heavy, bulky. I gave up, left it there, let him take it himself. By 2 o'clock everything was ready. 6 big bags of his things stood in the hallway. I unplugged the kitchen TV too and put it next to them. He had said it was his, so let him take it. I never liked that relic anyway. At 3:05 the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Evaristo. Alone. Messy face, unshaven, red-eyed. Clearly had a bad night. I opened the door, stood in the doorway, did not invite him in. "Hi," he said uncertainly. "Can I come in? Are my things packed?" I nodded at the bags. "Take them." He looked at the bags, then at me. Tried to smile. "Esp, come on, stop sulking, let us talk normally. There is nothing to talk about. Take your things and leave." "Listen." He stepped closer. I moved back into the apartment but did not close the door. "I get that you were against Mom coming, but you saw how it ended up. I did not think you would react like that. This is not a reason to divorce. For me it is." "Why though?" He spread his arms. "Over one argument? We are adults, we can fix things peacefully." "This is not one argument, Evaristo." I sighed tiredly. "This is the result. For a year and a half I have endured your mother interfering in our life. You letting her do it. You acting like this apartment was yours even though you did not put in a single dollar. Then on Friday you and she crossed the line." "What line?" He started getting worked up. "My mother wanted to stay with us. What's so terrible about that? Normal people host their relatives. Normal people ask permission from those who live here," I snapped back. "And you didn't even think to consult me. You just invited her for a month, an entire month, Evaristo, into a one-room apartment. So what? You could have put up with it." He raised his voice. "She's my mother, not some random woman. And this is my apartment," I shot back just as loudly. "And I decide who gets to live here. You didn't ask, which means you don't respect me. And without respect, there is no family." Evaristo fell silent, rubbed his face with his hands, stood there, thought for a moment, then spoke more quietly, conciliatory. "All right, suppose I was wrong. I should have asked. I'm sorry. Let's start over. I'll go to Mom, explain that it won't work for now, and come back. We'll forget this whole thing." "No," I shook my head. "We won't forget. Because in a month or two it'll be the same. She'll ask again, you'll agree again, and I'll be the villain again." "It won't." He tried to take my hand, I pulled away. "I promise. I'll tell my mother she can't do that. That she has to warn us, clear it with us." "Evaristo, you yourself don't think anything needs to be cleared," I said wearily. "You think you live here by right, that this apartment is joint property, when it isn't. Then how is it?" He frowned. "We're husband and wife, we share a household, a life. Or do you want me to pay you rent? I want you to understand, this is my home." I looked him in the eye. "I'm not against you living here, but that doesn't give you the right to treat it as your own. You can't invite whoever you want without asking me, especially for a month." Evaristo stood there looking at me, and I could see the hurt flaring in his eyes. He didn't understand, honestly didn't understand, what the problem was. To him I was a miser clutching my property and refusing to let his own mother stay. "All right then," he straightened up, his voice turning harder. "You won't compromise. You think I'm nobody here. Fine, I'm moving out. For good." "Good," I said calmly. He hadn't expected that. He thought I'd be scared, that I'd try to stop him. But I just stood there looking at him, and in my eyes there was no pleading, no regret, only exhaustion and resolve. "Are you serious?" he asked again. "Very. Take your things. The divorce papers have already been filed." He turned pale and stepped back. "You already filed?" "Yesterday. The court summons will come within a month." Evaristo stood there, mouth open. Then his face flushed and twisted. "You're such an idiot," he spat. "A complete idiot. You think I can't live without you? I'll find someone else, better than you, kinder, more humane, someone who values family, not just her property." "Good luck," I shrugged. "Take your things and get out." He grabbed the first bag and hurled it toward the elevator, then the second, the third. He worked angrily, sharply, muttering under his breath. I helped carry out the TV. It was heavy, after all. We set it down on the landing. Evaristo called the elevator and started loading the bags. "And the armchair?" I asked. "Throw it out yourself," he snapped without turning around. The elevator arrived. He shoved in everything he could and stepped inside. The doors closed. I stood on the landing for a moment, looking at the closed doors, then turned and went back into the apartment. Silence, emptiness, freedom. I walked up to the brown armchair and nudged it with my foot. Heavy, ugly. I'd have to order a bulk pickup to haul it away, and I'd buy something pleasant and light instead. Maybe a small rocking chair. I'd wanted one for a long time. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, sat by the window, and looked down. A few minutes later I saw Evaristo. He came out of the building with the bags and tried to flag a taxi. A car pulled up quickly. He loaded his things, got in, and left. That was it. He wouldn't be coming back. My phone buzzed. Remedios. I picked up, deciding to hear what she had to say. You threw my son out. My mother-in-law's voice was icy. Congratulations. You destroyed a family. Remedios, you destroyed the family, I replied calmly, when you decided you had the right to live in my apartment without my consent. Your apartment? She flared up. That's all you talk about, your property. Do people mean nothing to you? People who respect me do matter, I countered. But you and your son don't respect me. You think you can do whatever you want. You can't. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure you do. I'll go to the authorities and let them look into how you treated us, threw us out onto the street without coats, in the cold. That's called abuse. Go ahead, I smirked. Just explain up front why you came into someone else's home without the owner's permission, and why you plan to live there for a month without asking. I'm curious what they'll say. Remedios choked with indignation and started shouting something, but I didn't listen. I simply muted the call and put the phone on the table. Let her yell into the receiver if it made her feel better. The next few days passed quietly. Evaristo didn't write or call anymore. Remedios fell silent too. Apparently they realized they couldn't get through to me. I minded my own business, went to work, came home, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. A week later my colleague Milagros called. We were friends and sometimes talked outside of work. She knew about my issues with my mother-in-law. I'd share sometimes when things got especially bad. Esp, I've got news, Milagros said cautiously. I'm not sure if I should say anything, but you should probably know. Go on, I tensed. You're Evaristo. I saw him 2 days ago. He was with some girl. They were at a cafe, cuddling. I said nothing, processing the information. A new girlfriend. Quick, I had to admit. The divorce wasn't even finalized yet, and he'd already found comfort. Esp, are you there? Milagros asked, worried. I'm here, I said. Thanks for telling me, but honestly, I don't care anymore. Really? Really? We're getting divorced. He moved out. He's living with his mother. He can do whatever he wants now. Well, thank God. Milagros exhaled in relief. I was afraid you'd be upset. Though you know, the girl is a bit odd, covered in gold, heavy makeup, vulgar, to put it bluntly. I smirked. I pictured Evaristo sitting with his new fling, telling her about his stingy ex-wife who kicked him and his poor mother out onto the street, how he was the victim and I was the villain. The new girl, of course, would sympathize and stroke his head. Then he'd take her to meet Remedios, and she would judge whether the girl was suitable. If she passed, the cycle would start again. The mother-in-law would come over, give advice, lecture her on life. If the girl had a backbone like mine, the same story would repeat. If she were weak-willed, they'd trample her, subdue her, turn her into a maid. I felt sorry for that unknown girl, but not enough to warn her. Everyone makes their own choices. I had made mine. The summons arrived 3 weeks later, and the hearing was scheduled 10 days after that. I showed up at the appointed time. Evaristo was there too, sitting on a bench in the hallway, gloomy, in a wrinkled shirt. He did not greet me, just nodded. We went into the office and sat across from each other. The procedure took about 20 minutes. We did not divide any property. Everything was mine, and I showed documents for the apartment. Evaristo did not object, only sat there silently with a dark expression. We signed, received our divorce certificates. That was it. We walked out of the office at the same time. I headed toward the exit, and he called out, Esperanza, wait. I stopped and turned. He walked closer, standing awkwardly, fidgeting. I wanted to say I didn't think it would end like this, he began. Maybe we overreacted? We can still fix things, can't we? No, I shook my head. There is nothing to fix anymore. But why? He looked at me, confused. You destroyed a family over one argument? Not over one argument, Evaristo, I repeated tiredly, but because there was never respect between us. You did not respect me, and your mother did not respect me. You both thought I should bend, give in, tolerate everything. But I don't have to. So you don't regret it, he said flatly. Not once, I answered honestly. He nodded, turned around, and walked away. I watched him until he disappeared around a corner. Then I walked outside and drew a deep breath. Free, completely and irreversibly. The following weeks were filled with pleasant chores. I scheduled removal for the old armchair and bought a new one, light gray, soft, with a high back. I changed the curtains to something lighter, beige with a golden sheen. Rearranged the furniture the way I liked, not the way it was convenient for Evaristo. The apartment changed, became cozier, more mine. Work went on as usual. Once, during my lunch break in the staff room, the department head came in, sat next to me, and asked how I was. I briefly said I divorced and now lived alone. She nodded, was silent for a moment, then said, You know, Esperanza, we have an opening for a senior specialist in corporate clients. Higher salary, better conditions. If you're interested, apply. I think you'll do great. I was surprised. I had never thought about transferring departments. I liked my current one. Still, the offer was tempting. New position, new prospects, more money. Why not? Thank you, I said. I'll think about it. Don't delay, the manager smiled. Applications close at the end of the week. That evening I sat in my new armchair, sipping tea, thinking. New job, new phase in life. Maybe it was a sign. After the divorce, everything seemed to fall into place as if the universe was nudging me forward. I applied the next day. A week later I had an interview. 3 days after that, they told me I got the job. I was starting on the 1st of the next month. My salary increased by almost a third. I was pleased. One evening coming home, I ran into my neighbor, Aunt Consuelo, from the floor above. Sweet older lady, always kind. We chatted, and then she suddenly asked, And where's your husband? Haven't seen him in a long time. We divorced, I said simply. Oh, she clasped her hands, I didn't know. A shame, but don't worry, dear. You'll meet someone else. You're young and pretty. Thank you, Aunt Consuelo, I smiled. But I'm not looking right now. I'm fine on my own. That's right, she nodded. Why rush? Live for yourself a little. Rest. You'll see what happens next. We said goodbye and went to our apartments. I thought she was right. No need to rush. Life was starting over, and I wasn't in a hurry. 2 months after the divorce, Milagros texted me. She had seen Evaristo with the same girl again, and apparently they already broke up. He sat alone in the same cafe, gloomy, drinking beer. Milagros asked if she should say hello, but I asked her not to. Evaristo was in the past. I had no desire to dig it up. Later I heard from mutual acquaintances that Remedios was complaining to everyone about her ungrateful daughter-in-law, but always ended her story with, The main thing is not to be rude to the homeowners. Apparently she did learn the lesson. Late, but learned. Evaristo still lives with her. He is trying to find a rental place, but cannot afford anything decent. His salary does not allow it, and he does not want to live in a tiny one-room dump. So he suffers at his mother's. I do not feel sorry for him. He made his choice when he laughed at my question about asking the owner's permission, when he decided his mother was more important than his wife. Now he can live with the consequences. And I live my life. I am doing well in my new position. The boss praises me, co-workers respect me. I can afford not to pinch every penny and still save. I enrolled in English classes, something I had wanted to do for a long time but never had time. Now I have time. I go twice a week and enjoy it. On weekends I meet friends, go to the movies, the theater, or just walk around the city. Milagros introduced me to her friends, and we sometimes go out together. One of them, Abundio, seems interested in me, but I am in no rush. I smile, chat, nothing more. It's too early. I need time to heal and believe in relationships again. My apartment has become my true fortress. I reclaimed this space, filled it with myself, my habits, my rhythm. No one else's things, smells, expectations. Just me and my life. And it feels damn good. Sometimes I sit by the window in the evening with tea and think about everything that happened. Do I regret anything? No. Could I have acted differently? Probably yes. I could have tried to talk, compromise, bend a little. But I know myself. If I had given in that Friday, I would have lost respect for myself. I would have kept bending, lower and lower, until I turned into a shadow in my own home. No, I did the right thing. I defended my boundaries, showed that you cannot treat me like that. Yes, it cost me a marriage, but that marriage had been cracking for a long time. I simply refused to see it. Evaristo was not a bad person, he simply was not my person. We always saw life differently. I valued independence, personal space, respect. He was used to his mother deciding for him, controlling him, coddling him. He wanted a wife who would continue that role or accept his mother's presence. I did not accept it, and I am proud of that. Half a year has passed since that evening when I threw Evaristo and Remedios out onto the landing. 6 months of a new life, calm, steady, meaningful. I changed. I became stronger, more confident, more peaceful. I learned to say no without guilt, realized that my opinion matters, my desires matter, my boundaries matter. When my mother found out about the divorce, she was upset at first, said I should have tried harder, found common ground. But when I told her the whole story, she paused and said, "You know, sweetheart, maybe you're right. You cannot let people climb onto your neck." I let it happen, and ended up alone. Your father climbed on, and then left because I became uninteresting. You are stronger than me. Be proud of that. Her words meant a lot. My mother rarely speaks personally, but when she does, it hits home. Now I am sitting in my favorite chair, twilight outside, the city slowly settling down. A book on my lap, a steaming cup of mint tea on the table. Silence in the apartment, warm and cozy. No one will burst in with suitcases, issue orders, laugh at my questions. This is my home, my fortress, my rules. And I finally understood the most important thing. Before letting someone into your life, you must make sure the person understands whose walls these are, whose rules, whose territory. Not in terms of ownership, but in terms of respect. Those who respect can enter. Those who try to seize control must be shown the door, without pity, without hesitation. I showed them the door, and I do not regret it for a second. Life goes on, and it is beautiful, especially when you live it for yourself, not for someone else's expectations.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.